What if I told you there's a part of every woman's heart that most people never even see, let alone touch? A place that's invisible to the world, but where everything she's ever felt, her hopes, her wounds, her unspoken truths, lives quietly, just beneath the surface. Most men pass by it, distracted by what's easy to reach, but the ones who find it become unforgettable. Not because they say the perfect thing, not because they look a certain way, but because they understand how to meet her where she truly lives. This is not a video about tricks, techniques, or surface-level charm. This is a map to the deepest part of connection, a place so rare, so protected, that most never even know it's there until it's gone. And once you know what to look for, you'll see it everywhere. In the subtle tension behind her smile, in the distance in her laughter, in the way she leans in but never quite lands. If you've ever wondered why some connections fade no matter how hard you try, while others leave a mark that never disappears, you're about to find out why. So if you're tired of shallow advice, if you crave something real, raw, and honest, something that will not just change your relationships, but the way you see yourself, stay with me. Because what you're about to learn could be the key to being remembered, not for what you did, but for who you allowed her to be. She never said it out loud, but you could feel it. The way her eyes held a second of hesitation before she smiled, like the sunlight lingering just a moment longer before dusk. The way her body leaned in as if pulled by invisible gravity, yet something about her presence stayed just out of reach. Like standing at the edge of a familiar shore, watching waves that never quite break at your feet. She looked whole, yet incomplete, like someone had once promised her something sacred, painted her dreams in bold colors, and then left before they delivered it. There's a subtle ache in the way she carries herself, a gentleness tinged with caution, laughter that almost conceals the silent questions underneath. And you, like most, probably thought you needed to earn her affection through charm or effort. Maybe you assumed her resistance meant she needed convincing, or that your words and gestures could melt away what seemed like distance. But she wasn't waiting to be impressed. She was waiting to be understood. And she spent years, quietly, almost invisibly, watching men try and fail that test. There is a part of her that no one sees unless she chooses to show it. It's not a weakness. It's the center of who she is. It's where her instincts are sharp and quiet, like a fox moving unseen in the dusk. Where her memories gather in silence, the stories she's never told anyone because no one ever earned the right to listen. It's the part that still remembers what betrayal felt like before she even knew what to call it. The sting of trust broken, the sharp intake of breath when love becomes a lesson. Most never get close to it. Not because she's hiding, but because most people don't know how to approach without taking, and she's tired of being taken. That's the part of her you need to touch. Not with your hands, not with flashy words or grand gestures, with your presence, with your capacity to notice what others missed, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing and still choose to stay. That's the kind of touch that leaves an imprint, not a scar, not a fleeting thrill, but a mark that endures long, after the conversation ends. But here's what no one teaches you: her distance isn't always about you. Sometimes it's the echo of a past that taught her love comes with conditions, that to be close is to owe something. That intimacy is a debt, not a gift. So she learned to protect herself in quiet ways. A sharp remark like a shield raised at just the right moment. A distracted glance when the questions get too close. A sudden shift in tone that's almost invisible if you're not really paying attention. If you're not truly present, you'll miss it. You'll think it was moodiness, or maybe she lost interest. But if you're listening, if you're really attuned, you'll recognize it for what it is: a test of safety. Not safety in the obvious sense. Emotional safety. The kind that says, I'm not going to use your truth against you. I'm not going to flinch when you show me your real self. I'm not going to rush you through your silence so I can feel better about mine. Most men don't pass that test. They show up loud, confident, ready to prove they can lead, but they haven't led themselves through anything. They can win her attention, maybe even her body, but they never reach the part of her that actually remembers, and so she forgets them. Absolutely. Here's part 2. Seamlessly picking up the story, keeping every word you wrote, while expanding it with more emotional depth, vivid imagery, and insight, making it even more captivating and immersive. But when a man touches the part of her that doesn't need to be fixed, only felt, she remembers. She remembers because it's rare, because it's steady, because it doesn't demand or chase or plead. It listens, it responds, not reacts. It leaves space for her to exist without being edited, like finally finding a room where she doesn't have to whisper or rearrange herself to fit. That's the part most never make it to, not because they're incapable, but because they're too consumed by what they want her to feel rather than what she's already carrying. And if you can't hold her at her depth, she'll never trust you at her surface. She's not difficult. She's just done wasting softness on those who treat it like a weakness. What she's protecting isn't a game. It's a record of who stayed when she was most unlovable, a quiet tally kept in the background of her mind. And if that list is short, it's not because she's cold. It's because she's learned how much it costs to be open in a world that keeps asking her to shrink. You don't earn her by being nice, or successful, or saying the right things. You reach her when you stop trying to perform and start listening to the pauses, the ones in her speech, the ones in her breath, the ones in her eyes, those flickers of uncertainty, those moments when her words trail off and you're left in the vulnerable hush she's offering. What makes a woman unforgettable isn't what you give her. It's what you allow her to remember about herself when she's with you. When she speaks about her dreams and you don't interrupt, you become part of the rare silence that gives those dreams space to breathe. When she talks about something painful and you don't shift the subject, you become the ground beneath her feet. When she's quiet and you don't rush in to fill the space, you show her she's not too much, even in her stillness. Because that silence isn't empty, it's full of everything she's never had the room to feel. Touch her here, where her guard is up, but her soul wants to reach through. She might not say anything at first. She might test you with sarcasm or indifference, a rolled eye, a sharp quip, the armor of a woman who's learned caution the hard way. That's not resistance. That's memory. That's her instinct saying, don't trust too fast. Don't fall. For someone who won't stay through the mess, and make no mistake, there will be mess. Emotional, human, imperfect. Moments when she seems distant or fierce or heartbreakingly sad. Times when you feel like you're standing in the middle of a storm, not sure whether to wait it out or seek shelter. If you want to be remembered, learn how to meet her there. Not to fix it, not to clean it up, just to be with her in it, without trying to explain it away or make it easier for yourself. Because if she has to carry both her pain and your discomfort with it, she won't stay long. She's done with relationships that demand she shrink her truth so someone else can feel like a man. What she needs isn't a protector from the world. It's someone who doesn't become another reason she has to protect herself. So she watches closely. Not just what you say, but how you respond when she's uncertain, when she's quiet, when she's emotional in ways that don't flatter you. Can you sit with her grief without trying to solve it? Can you respect her anger without trying to out-talk it? Can you hold her tenderness without needing it to become something else? If not, she'll feel it. And no matter how attractive you are, how successful, how charismatic, you'll begin to retreat. Not out of punishment, out of preservation. She's been through enough to know what looks like love and what lasts like love aren't the same. Here's part 3. continuing with your exact style, honoring every original line, and weaving in deeper emotional context, psychological insight, and immersive detail. And you, if you're listening, have a choice. Not to manipulate, not to perform, but to become. Become someone who touches without reaching, someone who listens without waiting to speak, someone who sees what's beneath the mask and doesn't flinch. The world is full of people who want to be seen, but very few who know how to witness someone else, to sit quietly with the complexity and contradiction of a real person. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be honest, not just with her, with yourself. Because most men who fail to touch her deeply never learned how to touch themselves that way. They fear their own silence, rush past their own grief, and confuse control with strength. So when they stand in front of a woman with depth, they unconsciously try to shrink her to match their own emotional limits, as if the only way to feel safe is to make everything manageable and neat. But it never works, because a woman who has depth isn't looking for someone to match her rhythm. She's looking for someone who respects it, who doesn't turn away when it moves too slowly or pulses with intensity, who isn't unsettled by the changes in tempo. She needs to know you don't see her emotional weather as a storm to survive, but as a landscape to experience. If you can sit with her long enough to understand the way her silence speaks, she will remember you, not as someone who filled a role, but as someone who made her feel less alone in a world that keeps trying to flatten her. And if you can't, she'll forget you, just like she did the others, not out of cruelty, out of clarity, because her heart is not a performance stage. It's not a place to rehearse being loved. It's the final act where only truth belongs. When you reach that part of her, the part that no longer tries to impress, you'll see a version of her no one else gets. And if you're not ready for that, she'll sense it long before you. Admit it. She feels it in the pauses, in your restlessness, in the way your energy shifts the moment her vulnerability becomes inconvenient. So, be ready, because once you touch her there, everything else changes. You won't recognize the moment. It shifts. There won't be a dramatic conversation or a turning point you can point to later, but something in her will begin to change. The day she realizes you can hold her without trying to contain her, she'll relax in ways you've never seen. Her laughter will sound different. Her eyes will soften. Her defenses will quietly lower. She watches how you respond to discomfort, not in public, not when you're composed, but in those private, unspectacular moments where your pride has nothing left to hide behind. She notices what you do when she speaks without softening the truth, when her emotions don't align with your expectations, when the version of her that shows up isn't convenient. It's not about whether you always agree. It's about whether her full emotional range is allowed to exist in your presence without becoming a threat to your identity. Most men aren't prepared for that. They're drawn to her openness until it exposes something in them they've never had to confront. Maybe it's their inability to sit with uncertainty. Maybe it's the pressure to always be in control. Maybe it's the fear that they're not enough when they're not fixing or leading. But she doesn't need you to lead. She needs you to witness. She needs to know that when she stops being charming, you won't turn cold. That when she's grieving something she can't name, you won't disappear behind a wall of logic or silence. She needs to know you can stay conscious when the atmosphere changes. You'd be surprised how many men never notice the moment they start retreating. Not physically, emotionally. They lean out when it stops being easy. They tense when she gets quiet. They try to steer the interaction back towards something more familiar, more flattering. But intimacy doesn't live in comfort. It lives in how you respond when your image is no longer enough to hold her attention. If you can only engage when you feel desired or admired, you haven't learned how to relate. You've learned how to perform. That's the moment she begins to withdraw. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't owe you that. She just stops reaching for something you've shown her can't hold weight. And by the time you notice she's gone, the space between you will already feel like distance you can't cross. You might think it's something she needs to work through. You might convince yourself she was too complicated or demanding, but if you were honest, you'd realize she simply grew tired of having to translate her emotional life into something you wouldn't resist. She won't forget you because of what you gave her. She'll remember what she had to withhold.